So we finally got into the 9's. And we're talking about the road to get there and all the work it took and the things that the hurdles and things we had to overcome to get there. So people know what it's really like to try to chase that fast number, to be in the top 30 HellCats in the nation that's running these kind of times. So, you know, so as a customer's perspective, I think it's going to be a good insight for you to be able to share that kind of experience for other people that are on this mission.
So I actually have a lot to say about this because we've been on probably, I don't know, an 18-month journey. And when we started the journey, I wasn't necessarily dead set on a speed number. So the first thing I want to say to people that are lucky enough to be Bailey's customers, and so everybody knows, Chris and I have been together for 10 years, 2 high horsepower builds. And it's just with this most recent build that I really stated, I want a car that I daily drive on airbags, that I show, that is reliable, that I can drive to the track and run 9's. So folks, if you really sit down and think about that, that's a lot of things to pack into one car. So there's show cars, there's cars that are trailered to the track that run the kind of speeds that we're talking about. But there's not many cars that do it all in one package, and that presents unique challenges. But let me back up. When I started with the build, Bailey's has this fantastic Mad Hatter package, and I had a stock HellCat. I've always been a high horsepower guy. Enough is never enough. And I said, Chris, what should we do here? And he said, well, I've got this fantastic Mad Hatter package, totally reliable. It'll crank you up 150 to 200 to the wheel kind of ballpark. I'm doing that package all day long. And so we did that. And I still wasn't saying to Chris exactly at that point in time, hey, I have to run a 9. I was just saying, that sounds great. Let's beef up the HellCat. Well, then for me, it became, well, Chris, I want my exhaust to sound a certain way. And then Chris said, well, if you want to lope, and I have one of the few HellCats that really, when you listen to my exhaust, it really lopes. I love that old hot rod sound. But I still didn't tell Chris that the only goal was to run 9's. It was, I want to lope. So we did a torque converter and a super aggressive cam and a smaller pulley. And so here we are with this beautiful exhaust note, a ton of horsepower. And it was right about at that point in time that the Quick 30 event started happening, a really great setup for beginner racers like myself to go get a lot of runs in, not wait forever, in a good setting. So then we started racing, and I went out and kind of ran some mid-10s, and then I got the bug, right? So then I'm like, okay, Chris, we've got a huge dyno number. That's great. We've got an exhaust note. That's great. But now all of a sudden, I'd finally have drag raced for the first time. I love it. 9 seems to be the threshold. Well, so then we send the car back, and at that point, it was more tuning, race gas tune, etc. I took the car back to the track without Chris at that point in time. I bought some real drag wheels and tires. Went back to the track, and I was having real trouble on my 60-foot, which is, in simple terms, I was struggling with how to launch properly. But I still ran a 10.2 with, for those of you who race, you'll know that running 10.2s on a 1.6 or 1.7 60-foot is really a fast car that can run 9's if you dial things in. So then at that point, Chris and I continued to talk, and we were starting to feel limited by the stock supercharger. And also what happened at this point in time is that Chris also enlightened me as to a pretty new advancement, and I'll let him talk about this, but the ProFlex Commander. So for Chris and I at the build, I'm telling Chris, I have to run 9's. It has to be reliable. I still want my show car. And Chris says, well, you know what? Let's go ahead and slap a Maggie on it and put this ProFlex Commander system in there. And that lets us run ethanol at the track. It lets us run 93 on the street. It lets you run anything in between. It's like a dummy-proof way to safely run ethanol. So we pulled those things together. And really, those weren't way bigger dyno numbers because Chris had done an amazing job with the stock blower of getting big dyno numbers. But let me stop right here and tell everybody who's going to watch this, big dyno numbers does not a 9-second car make, right? There's not a correlation between a big dyno number and you can go to a track and actually run a 9. And we'll talk more about that in a second, but just kind of the genesis. So I started, again, to recap. Chris, I want a lot of horsepower. Okay, done. Chris, I want a certain exhaust note. Okay, done. Oh, wait, I've just drag raced for the first time. Now I want to be fast. That's a different deal than going to Chris and say, get me a big dyno number.
And the other thing, too, that we battled is I think the first time you did that pass, I was 10-2, and it was in the middle of summer. So it was hot.
Yes.
So the other thing that we added to that mix was the killer chiller to help combat some of those temps. So right. We did the killer chiller and then the Magnuson and then our E85 stuff. So, you know, it was a long road of change that we were still doing. But yeah, absolutely. It's to go from a show car to something that sounds badass, then going to a 9-second and really trying to hit a goal. This is where it gets juicy. This is where all the hard work, efforts, and everything starts to really come into play. And it's not just okay, here you go, you got a 9-second car, send you on your way kind of thing. That doesn't work that way. So
my point in going through the whole genesis is, and I'm starting to tell people in my circle, like, you need to know what your goal is up front, because Chris can do anything you want, but you know, high horsepower, that's great. That'll be a fast car. Is that a 9-second car? Not necessarily. A certain exhaust note, does that necessarily help you go faster? No. So know what your goal is. At the very end, wherever you want to go to ultimately, it really helps Chris to know that up front to make the right moves. And so I kind of took a convoluted route because I didn't really know that I had to run 9's, and that was like the thing that was going to matter to me the most. So that's why if it sounds like, hey, why did you take all these different steps? It's because I didn't know what my goal even was. Okay, so here we are, and now we've got a Magnuson supercharger, forced induction, stage 2, really amazing inner chiller that keeps your intercooler temps amazingly, shockingly low. And Chris probably will do a whole talk on that. Heat blanket, blower lifter plate, you know, the whole bit. The guys did incredible on it. So now we've got, you know, 950 horsepower to the wheel. We've got a good cooling system. We've got race wheels and tires. But now the magic needs to happen. And Chris brought a whole crew of people, and he drove to Houston for me, picked up the car. We went to the track. And guys, the magic ended up, so Chris has the engine on lock all day long. The magic turned out to be in the transmission. It was really amazing to watch. The capability of the team and how sophisticated and the level of what they were contending with a 17 HellCat Charger has a certain transmission, and whether you put that in track or street or a custom mode dictates many things. There's a lot of degrees of freedom, and the G-forces we're putting down, what we came to learn is it's pushing the transmission into different places. And so here's what we saw. So we're at the track. Chris has his crack team down there. We're running drag radials, skinnies up front. We get out and do run one, and I think I ran, 10-4, which was, great for the first run. And for me, guys, remember, we have to dial in airbag height, tire pressure, which modes to set my particular HellCat in. These cars really do have some variability. One HellCat's not the next HellCat. So we're dialing in which settings within the computer, where to put the airbags, where to put the tire pressure, and we're just feeling it as we go through run after run. Of course, we're benefiting from the inner chiller system and Chris's expertise at the racetrack. Now, let me point out, we're running 2700 DA this night. We're running 90-degree temperature and humidity, just awful race conditions. Everybody was running probably a second to a half a second off what they can run in the winter. And that's not just talk or excuse, that's true. So bad night, but so now we're at the track. Chris and his team, Seth, and all the guys, we go through a run, and then we're recording. So I'm driving these quarter-mile runs with a laptop sitting next to me, HP tuners plugged in. Chris is recording the run, every run. And then at the end of the run, we're talking about how did it feel, what did I do, and then Chris and his team are looking at a vast amount of data really quickly, sending files back and forth to a tuner who wasn't there, and Chris himself, a couple of laptops in play. And the first thing we ran into is the transmission wasn't shifting at high enough RPM. So now the boys are figuring out, well, why is that? We want to shift at 6,400. The data logging shows we're shifting at 5,800. Okay, why is that? So then we solve that, and now we're getting some really amazing launches, but now we're having a problem in third and fourth gear. Now, keep in mind, guys, we didn't run anything slower than a mid-10. And there was a bunch of badass Trackhawks out there, and all they could run was, we were one of the fast cars that night, even just into the high 9's, which we hit twice. So then, why is the car doing something in third and fourth gear that it shouldn't? So now the boys are figuring that out. And so we got the transmission worked out, and I ran the 9.9, and I had a lot of fans out. Not many cars were running 9's, and I think with conditions, everybody's telling me that same run is a mid to a low 9, which is really something special. So it was a goal that I set with Chris as we already explained, in kind of a roundabout way to get to that goal, but we hit it. And then Chris says, well, shit, let's go faster. And I said, well, shit, let's go faster. So now Chris says, okay, well, let's go. And here's the thing you'll hear from all the Instagram famous people that maybe don't have the proof in the pudding, or maybe they have some cars that run fast, but they break. I've got the perfect of all worlds. I can drive my car from Dallas to Houston, show up at the track, run 9's, and drive home. I don't need a trailer. My shit's not broken. Knock on wood, right? Anything can break, and who knows what'll happen, but so far so good. But then everybody will tell you, well, just throw a little timing down low. That's the answer. That's just, you got a safe tune, throw some timing down low. Well, we throw some timing down low with traction control on, with a badass burnout prep on a sticky track. I still can't grip once we put the extra timing in. So now what's happened, guys, is my 60-foot suffers, but I hit the highest speed at the end of the quarter mile of the night. Okay, so that was the only run where I hit 140 at the end of the quarter. So our 9-second run has a really good 60-foot and getting to like 138 on the top speed. So now we're tinkering, right? We got the transmission sorted out, we think. Now let's play with timing. And so guys might be thinking, well, why do you need a different supercharger? There's HellCats with stock superchargers. They're running 9's, they're doing this, they're doing that. The problem with stock supercharger is, one, eventually snout bearing is going to go out, and two, you really have to max it out and rag it out to get anywhere near where we got. And then what that means is you don't have extra capacity at the track to tinker with things because you're at the ragged edge. And guys, I'm talking like I know. I've learned all this just from spending the 2 days with Chris at the track and through this journey. So it's an incredible learning. Having a daily driver that hits 9 is nothing short of incredible. And people throw out running 9s too casually. We just realized, as Chris said at the beginning, we're one of the 30 fastest Mopars, like in Texas, which probably means the country with that run. So, you know, people like to say, you got 1,000 horsepower. Oh, 9's easy. It's not easy to hit 9. Chris and his team put an incredible amount of expertise to it. The magic was in the transmission. And then it's just continual give and take. And if you have the luxury to spend some time with Chris looking at a computer and really figuring out what he's trying to avoid with the knock sensors, and then what he's doing with timing versus boost versus temperature, there's just a lot to it, guys. And running 9 is really a real accomplishment. I'm so proud, and I can't understate how much skill and expertise and hard effort went into hitting that. It's not an easy thing. Super proud. We're going to be going faster soon. But Chris, I'll turn it back to you. I think that's a pretty good recap of kind of the track night.
Yeah, that was, and a lot of it is, you know, to also touch on it, we're still on a stock bottom end and we're still on the stock transmission. So we haven't made any upgrades. We haven't done any changes to any of that. And we're still able to play around, tinker with it, and get it dialed in. So there's companies that make 9-second transmissions and 8-second transmissions. They're just different build qualities. And we were able to kind of get in there on the stock trans by playing with some of that. And to touch on more information on transmission is, or Dodge in general, it's logic based. So Dodge is kind of like an artificial intelligence. What they call is neural networking, but it's kind of an artificial intelligence. So it takes a case of scenarios, gives it some options that it can run, and then gives you the final output. So for example, you know, we said that the biggest thing, or the reason why we use traction control, was because we wanted to minimize the amount of slip. Because if we can get the tire to not slip, it'll keep the transmission in the mode that we're trying to dial in, right? And that tested true when we took traction control off, added the timing, and we broke traction loose. The trans went into entire shift mode, and you hit the rev limiter in every gear down the track. So it's the modes, and it's being consistent to be able to get the correct data to consistently replicate the race, so you can have the proper changes and information that we need. So I think we ended the night in the transmission in sport mode, not track mode, traction control on, and all the suspension settings set to street. So playing with those tables and those, they call it aggressions and scenarios. So pinpointing those aggressions and scenarios in HP tuners was able to get that. And we still got room to grow. And then when we build that transmission, all of that goes out the window and we start over. Because now the time that we say that it needs to start requesting the gear gets cut down, because it can make the shift faster now with the built transmission. So now we can get more precise and all that. So yeah, there's a lot of things that go into it. Essentially every car, if you want to get into the 9s, there's 3 phases of tuning. There's your dyno, because the transmission and everything has their own things. On the dyno, we were hitting 6,500 RPMs, no problem. Then you have your street, because your street logic on transmission shifting and everything else is completely different. And then you have the scenario that happens at the track, which it starts looking at those different kinds of scenarios based on G's, shift points, torque values, things like that that's happening. So it takes, for one car, you can essentially tune one car 3 different times, and then for a customer to get in it, drive to Houston, racetrack, back home, it all has to make sense so the customer's not with a laptop. Change this, change that, load this tune file before you go to the track, load this before so you can go home, load this if you're going to street race, load this if you're going to drive and take the wife out, you know. So you got to kind of find the balance between all of them. So we've got it narrowed down for you, street, strip, street and cruising around in one tune, full kill mode, trend shifting and everything in the next tune. So, you know, we've got you narrowed down to 2 that we can get down best, and trying to achieve all of these things in a car that you have confidence in to get up the next day, start it up, go to work, go run your errands, go do what you need to, is ultimately the big goal. You know, everybody wants a fast car, but it's not fun when you got problems and you're chasing things down all the time, and then you go out and you question, man, I hope today this thing fires up and runs good. That's not what you want. You know what I mean? So we're trying to find the balance in all of that. And I always tell people, if you want a track car, I can build you a track car, but it's not going to be fun to drive on the street. If you want the best of both worlds, it's going to take some work, because we gotta find the thin line in between everything to be able to make it work right. So.
Yeah, no, that's a good thing that I want to jump back in on. Truly, what Chris has me set up in is literally dummy proof. It used to be if you messed up and you went and you poured ethanol in your 93 tune, you know, or vice versa, would really kill you. So if you put some low octane and you're in a high octane tune, you're breaking stuff. I don't have to think about the fuel at all, and that's a big deal. So I can have half a load of 93 and half a load of a crappy ethanol, and the car drives great, and I'm still faster than most people on the street. I can run around at all 93, so my car tends to sit at different times, and I don't want things gummed up and gunked up with some of that crappy fuel that you can get. So when I drive around, I'm on 93 about 90% of the time. Not to mention, there's not a ton of quality ethanol filling stations, and who wants to be out buying barrels of fuel and filling up that way all the time? So the point of having the car that is reliable, that you don't have to overthink, and I don't want to, you know, kid anybody. We've got different switches for the inner chiller, and my car's kind of pushing the higher end of being complicated, but that's also some of that's on the appearance side for me, and the airbag system and all the different lights, and then the inner, you know. So be careful, folks, if you're really going after this. Again, I want to go back to what I said at the beginning. Know your goal to begin with. Will help Chris guide you, but he really builds systems that are reliable, and he builds them so that, again, a really complicated fuel setup, I don't even have to think about, and then I get to go to the track and run pure ethanol, and just kill those runs, and then go fill up on 93, and away I go. Do not get caught up on a horse. If your goal is to go fast, do not go bother Chris about a horsepower number. A horsepower number, and I had to learn this too, and even friends I have in the car scene don't understand this completely, and hopefully Chris and I just did a good job of explaining some of the complication, and the magic was really in the transmission and understanding the different modes after we got the engine dialed in. But horsepower doesn't equal 9-second car, and that's what you're going to see. And, you know, you're going to see that on Instagram. There's Instagram famous people who, you know, they bag on other tunes, or, oh, that car should do this, or it should do that. And I'm here to tell you there's way more that goes into it to have all the things that we've accomplished in my build. So keep that in mind, and don't shoot for a horsepower number if your goal is to be fast at the track. Shoot to be fast. That's it. And it's just, they're different things. And I had to learn that too. And the other thing, if you end up, if you end up talking to Chris, the other thing I want to say is that the team up at Bailey's really stands behind really stands behind it and gets behind what your goal is. And of course, we have a long relationship, but that's because that was earned. And I can't say enough about what we've achieved. Chris will be the only person who touches my car in that way. Highly recommend check him out, and then also follow us, because we have designs on going faster this winter, and we'll definitely want to get back with the people and let them know how we do.
Yeah, yeah, and we don't just go throwing a bunch of products at cars that haven't been tested. We aren't the first to always come out with certain products. We'll always sit down and wait, especially when recommending to customers. We'll always kind of sit back and watch and learn and see how things are going, because I don't want the questionable reliability to come up. So that's why we're always the last to come up with like that E85 part, and some of the other things that we've done with your car. You've got certain pulley combos, pulley situations, things like that everybody recommends. The main goal for a shop like us is the reliability aspect of everything. So, for you to feel confident to fly in, pick up your car, drive to Houston, and do everything you need to, and the only time you're going to see me again is when you want something else, should speak wonders. I mean, you just drove a 9-second car from my shop to Houston. How many times?
Exactly.
I mean, and I've offered to go pick it up for you, and you won't take that. You'll say, no, I'm driving up because I'm flying out of DFW, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that. So,
yeah.
I mean, you've constantly driven from here to Houston multiple times, and everywhere else to car shows. I think you went to California.
I drove the car to California.
Yep.
No doubt the reliability is second to none. And the other thing I would say, and I'm a little down on some things of Instagram and some lack of understanding people have. I mean, Chris could take my car and he could throw all kinds of timing at it, and we could probably do something faster, but it's going to be shit to drive when I'm not on the track. I had to learn that the hard way because I was pushing Chris on my cam, and we had to dial back because, man, it just wanted to push through every stoplight in town, and it wasn't fun to drive. So listen to Chris when he tells you certain things, because we've learned the hard way on a bunch of stuff, or ask me and I'll tell you. But yeah, I've driven the car thousands of miles at really high speed, and I just have never had, and I hate to, you throw things like this out in the universe and something comes to get you, so I'm knocking on wood over here. The reliability is second to none. You won't see a bunch of bad press about Bailey's and a bunch of broken down cars and cars, you just don't hear that about Chris. And guys, that should be worth everything. Availability is worth everything. And I've never had a problem. And we're now one of the 30 fastest cars. And we're comparing our summer numbers to other people's winter numbers. So in another few months, we're going to get back out there, tweak a couple of things. Chris, we've kind of told them about everything we've done, the FI interchiller, the Maggie, different pulley combinations. We haven't not opened up the engine. We have stock headers, stock bottom end, all that. So we haven't touched a lot of what we can touch. But maybe tell them about the icebox. That is really the only thing we want to do next, and maybe some different tires. But that's kind of what we're down to.
Yeah, so the next go around that we're going to change, and this is, I think, this is probably one of the biggest battles that we fight in Texas, and not necessarily people up north really fight too much, but the heat and humidity here are just killer. So what we're going to, on top of the kilo chiller, we're going to add the icebox into things and start bringing that into the mix, so we can, while we're in the pits cooling things down, we can run the pump and get ice water flowing through the supercharger, so that way the inner chiller, when we're fired up going down the track, can do its job successfully and not start combating temperatures that are starting at 100 degrees in Texas. and we're fighting to bring it below 100 degrees. We get an ice tank, put ice in it, then we can run, you know, the water through the blower and start getting ahead of this 100 degrees before we're ready to start going down the track. So, you know, temperatures are everything. The proper way is, as temperatures come up, ignition timing comes down. Temperatures go up, ignition timing comes down, horsepower goes down. So we want to be able to control the temperatures so we can keep as much of that horsepower we intend to in the car. So that way, if
Chris, let me tell the people that this was surprising to me, but before we had the intertiller system and the much more efficient blower, I literally within less than a quarter mile, I would start feeling power loss. Now, the car's still hauling ass down the track. I'm still talking low 10 runs, but the rate of acceleration really declined rapidly, and I came to understand that was heat related. And so just think about it, folks. You're talking about in a quarter of a mile, the temperatures and heat can get so bad that you feel a dramatic loss in horsepower, and how it manifests is you just feel like the rate of acceleration is slowing down dramatically before you're even at the end of a quarter mile. I mean, that's a tiny distance. And I finally kind of got my head around that. And that's when Chris and I started really working on, okay, well, how do we keep things cooler? Because you go to a track and you get one run in the morning and then you wait 4 hours and now it's hot and your car's hot. And there's no practicing your racing technique because the car's running differently now. So Chris is right. It's a big fight, and it is not something that you wonder, is it happening to me? You feel it dramatically, even within just a quarter mile on a single pass.
Yeah. So this next few steps that we're going to take, I think, are going to be pretty awesome and help us in the consistency of it, and then really start chasing down those mid to low 9s. So I'm excited.
Absolutely.
And I'm excited, more importantly, to race in wintertime, because that means that it's not going to be so hot outside and in the garage. So I can't wait for winter. Yep.
Yes, sir. Let's go.
So, all right, Josh, I appreciate your time on that, and thank you for everything. And again, it's always a pleasure to be working with you and building some of these cars, because you truly build some of the best cars that I've ever seen. So thank you.
And back at you, the car will never go anywhere else. I'm Bailey's proud. You've built me one hell of a car. People are noticing, and the smart folks, I think, that have a chance will be coming to you, and I'll be pushing them that way just because it's the right thing to do for your friends. But thank you for everything. Yeah. All the best to you and your family, and we'll be in touch.
All right, Josh. We'll see you.